Hello and welcome to Live from SADS. My name is Deena McAndrew and I'm coming to you from Iowa City. I'm a nurse with the Pediatric Electrophysiology program at the University of Iowa Children's Hospital. And today we have a guest speaker, Angel Carter. She's going to come to us from Tennessee, and our focus today is going back to school and having safe school. So without further ado, I'm going to welcome Angel on.
Hi there. So
Hi.
my name is Angel Carter. I am a registered nurse. I work at Monroe Carroll Junior Children's Hospital at Vanderbilt. And what I do on a daily basis is I run the Project Adam Middle Tennessee program. My background is peds cardiology. I was a PICU nurse for a while, and then also became the nurse manager for the peds cardiology inpatient unit before I was given this opportunity to start the Project Adam program. So peds cardiology is my background.
That is mine as well, and it's been a wonderful, wonderful place to spend my time and career.
Yes.
So, can you tell us a little bit about so Project Adam pulled you from your hospital unit, and can you tell me what, if you could give a brief synopsis, what is the main focus and mission of Project Adam?
Sure. Yeah. So Project Adam, the word Adam stands for Automated Defibrillators in Adam's Memory. And a family started this program through a partnership with the Children's Hospital of Wisconsin in 1999 after they lost their son. He was a high school student, 17-year-old, named Adam because he suddenly collapsed in the middle of a high school basketball game. Recognition of what was happening was a little bit slow, and there was not an AED at his school. And so he did not survive his cardiac arrest. So his family started this program, and we started small. It was a grassroots, it's a nonprofit. Each program is supported by a children's hospital in that community. And so in 1999, started with one program, and now in 2025, we are in 33 states, and we have 49 programs. And what we do on a daily basis is work with schools. We help schools put together cardiac emergency response plans. That's our whole mission, is helping them prepare for a cardiac emergency to prevent sudden cardiac death. And so I also work with youth sports and community centers. So anywhere in the community where youth live and play, that's where I'm focused. And that's what I do every day, is go into schools and work with school nurses, principals, coaches, really whoever will let us, and do emergency response training.
Quite a growth in program over the years.
Yes.
Yes.
It's been fun to be part of it. We've been active since 2017.
Wonderful. So if I'm a parent with a child entering a school, and you say the term cardiac emergency response team, what are some key elements of that? And then we'll move further on into, interaction and communication with the school.
Sure. So to have a cardiac emergency response plan, it takes some intentional steps. A lot of our schools have AEDs. I know all of them don't, and we can talk about that. But if a school has an AED, it's not enough to just mount it on the wall. It doesn't do any good if no one knows it's there, and if we don't surround that device with people who are trained in CPR and emergency response. So to implement a well thought out cardiac emergency response plan, you need a written plan. And then you need accessible AEDs that are well maintained so that they're always rescue ready. And you need good signage directing both in-house and visitors to that AED. You need a emergency response team, so a small designated group of people, 5 to 10 people within that school campus, and it can be anyone. It can be administrators, coaches, custodians, school nurses, really whoever will be on the team, and many of them are voluntold. And then you need them to be trained in what does an appropriate response look like. And then you need to have a plan that involves how are you going to communicate out that you need help, how are you going to activate the plan, and then how are you going to care for that victim over the next, few minutes, whether it be 5 minutes or whether it be 20 minutes until EMS arrives to provide them the appropriate level of care. And to me, and one of Project Adam's main focuses is one of the best ways to implement your plan is to test it, rehearse it, run AED drills with your team, CPR AED drills, so that when you run a drill, there's always sort of this aha moment of, oh, okay, we can do this, even though we are not medically trained. We can do this. We can care for this victim. And this didn't go so well. That went really well. How can we shave some time off? Because your goal is drop to shock in less than 3 minutes. So how can we shave some time off to make our response faster and more efficient? And we debriefed together afterwards and really learn from the event. It's not a pass fail. It's just a learning exercise.
You mentioned training. What can you describe the level of training? I know sometimes it's kind of intimidating for people who are non-medical.
Yeah.
And so I'm sure there are ways to soften that and make it doable for them and attainable. So what is the exact training they would get?
There's a lot of movement in our nation right now and some legislative requirements that are mandating that different groups of pockets of teachers, coaches, administrators, et cetera, be CPR and AED certified. We totally acknowledge, when I say we, I'm talking about Project Adam. We totally understand that sometimes certification can be a barrier. It costs a lot of money sometimes if you don't have the resources within your own school district to provide the certification. You have to go to an outside company. And so we focus a lot on if certification isn't possible, don't let that stop you. You can be trained. So trained means you talk about how to recognize sudden cardiac arrest, how to provide hands-only CPR, and how to retrieve and use your AED. And then we take that small group of people that have been designated as the response team, and we work with them in a small group, showing them what an appropriate response would look like. We can usually do that in 30, 45 minutes. It's not hard. We really stress to them that this care that this victim is going to receive from you, if this ever happens, and the next, during those key 5 to 10 minutes or whenever the paramedics arrive, is the key to their survival, to discharge. And so we really just help them understand what that looks like.
So I know this is a time of year teachers are coming back to school and they're full of in services. And I know from our local school, it's hard to get all the training in that they need. But it's so important, not just for the students, but for anybody who's attending that school, whether it be a grandparent at a sporting event or a teacher themselves. So if you have your response team and your plan in place and you practice that at the beginning of the year, how often does Project Adam recommend that they revisit that?
All that's required when you are applying to become a designated heart-safe school is one drill per year. But most schools are, like I said, having that aha moment when they do these drills, and they're realizing that 2 a year feels better. Usually their team, when they debrief with them, you'll say, do you feel better prepared for an event after this rehearsal or after this drill? And they'll say yes, and we need to do more. So a lot of our schools will usually ask for help, and a lot of them are independent. Once we kind of do a train the trainer approach. So I don't have to be present for every drill, but once they kind of wrap their heads around what best practice is, then they can move forward. And most of them do 1 to 2 a year. The requirement is 1 per year.
And then, of course, to be checking the AED in the meantime.
Yes,
because I know it's really important to make sure that, as you said, you can't just hang it on the wall, but you need to make sure that someone's looking at that AED to make sure the battery's still working well for you. And now I live close to a very small school, and then we're also close to Iowa City that has very large schools. And so how many AEDs, or do you have a location? I know, drop to shock is 3 minutes. Some of these schools with their add-ons are pretty substantial in size. So what is
Yeah.
Project Adam's recommendation on location and how many?
Well, I think a lot of school districts make that decision based on how many students are in their population or how spread out their campus is. We don't really have a recommendation for how many per population, per number of students. It's more about the layout of your school. And that's one of the reasons why we advocate for doing drills. If you're not sure if you have enough, let's do a drill in a corner. And if you can't make it in 3 minutes, then that's kind of like, okay, we need to add another AED. So it's learn as you go. And it's if a school can only afford one AED, that's better than nothing. And then you help them make long range goals of, okay, maybe every year you budget in for another one. And slowly helping them understand why it's important to have them outdoors as well, close to their athletic fields. And so we just meet them wherever they are in their budget and then help them grow their program from there and provide data for them if they are advocating for more AEDs with their school boards or their finance people. Okay, we did a drill here and we could not get the AED there in 3 minutes or under. We just couldn't. And so we just kind of work through it slowly but surely. But I don't have a certain number for you.
With your care plans that you need to be able to, somebody needs to be able to get the AED there within 2 minutes because you have to also figure that it takes some time to apply and
Yes.
Assess the rhythm. So if my school needs help in finding AEDs, do you have resources for schools that can obtain them? I know there's a wide variety, and how do we know what's the right one? And there's a $1,500 one or a $500 one. Do you have an avenue for schools to purchase them?
Sure, yes. So each project, and now I can only speak for Project Adam, but each Project Adam program is autonomous in how they function. And so some children's hospitals have really deep pockets in their foundations, and they actually give grants towards or give out AEDs. And then other Project Adam programs have $0 because everything we provide, as far as all this training, all these on-site visits that I provide, I don't bring any revenue in. It's all provided free of charge for a school. So speaking for my program in Middle Tennessee, we don't have a pocket of money to provide AEDs. If we receive a donation from someone, we'll quickly turn it around and try to donate that to a school in need. But usually what I'm able to do on a national basis, Project Adam has formed quite a few partnerships with some AED distributors that give a 20% discount or something similar to that discount if a school is striving to become heart safe and needs help acquiring AEDs. And then we're also part of the NFL Smart Hearts Sports Coalition that was formed about a year and a half ago through the Damar Hamlin incident. And so that coalition has two specific distributors that they have partnered with, and they are giving significant discounts to schools and to athletic teams. And so I just make connections for people and get them in touch with distributors who believe in what we're doing and will give them the best price they can.
On the Project Adam website. So if someone were to be listening to this but needed that resource later on, would they just need to contact a Project Adam representative in their area?
Yes. If you go to projectadam.com, there the list of all the affiliates is there. And even if you don't see one in your state, because there is if you go to affiliate login, there's a advocacy map, and it's got the United States on it, and all the states are marked that have a Project Adam program. Even if there's not one in your state, just email the state nearest you or email National Project Adam in Wisconsin. They will connect you to a distributor. We have them all over the nation.
If say I have a child with a newly diagnosed inherited arrhythmia and I want to know what my school's program looks like, would you contact the nurse? Is it vary school to school? And do you recommend usually approaching the school board about about your request to have a plan in place?
I don't know that you need to go to the school board. They're not in that school building. I think the school nurse, if the school is fortunate enough to have a budgeted school nurse in their building, then that's probably your person. They're going to be in contact with the provider who's providing the care plan. They're going to be the one who is checking the maintenance of the AED. So they're much more plugged into that program, and they will be the right person to communicate with. All schools, though, don't have a school nurse budgeted to them, or they may have a nurse, but that nurse is busy going to 4 or 5 different schools in one day just doing skills. And so that nurse has their hands quite full with all of that, and they may not have the capacity to also run the AED program. So then I would reach out to the administrator. If I found that there was not good nursing coverage, I would reach out to the school administrator, the principal, or the assistant principal, and get started there and see where they would send you.
Communities have done community-wide fundraisers for the school, and it seems to be a very, very successful. I don't know of any who have put it out to their community that we need these funds for this cause, and they have not been able to raise that money. You can get really creative about fundraisers. So
yes.
And I just want to stress too, we often think about, when you mentioned the NFL incident, we think about sudden cardiac arrest in athletes and kind of that higher level collegiate or high school, but having a safe school includes your elementary and your junior high.
Yes.
All the way down. So it's not just your athletes that can have events, and it's not just those kids who are diagnosed. Our concern is those kids who may not know that they have an inherited arrhythmia. So we just assume that everybody's at risk, and have that available for everyone. So
no, that's right. That's right. A lot of our legislation in our nation addresses grades 9 through 12. They had to start somewhere. But yes, you are so correct in that our middle schools and our elementary schools need to also be prepared by implementing an emergency response plan. I mean, last year we had a 5-year-old who survived her sudden cardiac arrest beautifully. She was out on the playground, but it was because that school was prepared. She got immediate CPR, and the AED was used successfully on her. And so you just never know. You have to prepare for everyone.
That story. If my child is going on a field trip, are there built-in plans to address those off-site issues or experiences?
I would say some. Not all schools have thought that far ahead. And so it's probably a case-by-case basis. And I would say if you are a parent of a child with a congenital heart defect that lends itself to being at risk, and you've been told by your provider that your child may be at risk, I would definitely have a conversation with the school and share what you can with them. I would make sure there was a care plan available, that the care plan was being followed, and what the recommendations from the care plan are. And then to ensure, in my mind, someone needs to go on that field trip that is CPR trained. Maybe, hopefully, more than one. Again, depending on what the school has been able to dedicate towards providing training. But you want to have at least 1 to 2 people who are CPR trained. And I think your provider would be a good resource, but asking the provider, is this something where the child should take their AED with them? You could, I mean, in some instances, because we are kind of grappling with this in our sports arenas, and I know it's not all athletes, you're right, but that's sort of what's in my mind right now, because this is something we're working on. You think about your bowling teams who are going to their bowling league, their bowling alleys to have their competitions. They're having to check ahead of time, does this bowling alley have an AED? So if you're going to a museum or your field trip is going somewhere that is quite public, they may have an AED there. And it might be as simple as just calling ahead as a parent and saying, hey, do you have an AED? My child is scheduled to be there on a field trip next week, and just making sure. So calling ahead maybe if it's a public space, and then just following up with your provider and making sure there are people who are CPR trained on the field trip.
You mentioned care plan a few times. I think we're going to just move over to that silo a little bit, because I know Project Adam is very focused on preparing the schools and the community and training them. And when we talk about a care plan, that is totally separate than the Project Adam focus. This is an individual focus. So SADS has done an amazing job, and I use them. I use them quite often in my role working with the pediatric electrophysiology population. It's a great resource for parents. They have lists on their website. If you go to the SADS.org, you can look at the schools, you can look at care plans. So individual based on their diagnosis, whether it's long QT, whether it's CPVT, or hypertrophic cardiomyopathy. They're all specific to that child's diagnosis. These are care plans that the physician and the care team contribute information to, but that it's really the primary focus of the parent and their responsibility to locate that form, fill it out with the assistance of other team members, and then take that to the school. And so it is addressed in that care plan. They address field trips, recommendations of locations of AED, that there is an AED, and that someone, as you said, just to reiterate, Angel, someone is CPR certified who's attending that. Also, the level of activity. These care plans include what level of activity can my child be expected to do, and what can be omitted from their expectations. If you have, for example, if you have a child on a beta blocker and your PE class is, grading you on getting your heart rate over 160 for X amount of time, that's not appropriate for that child. So their care plans are very, very individual. And as I said, they're extremely easily accessible. If you complete a care plan and you take that to your school, it's very rare that a school would not be supportive of that. However, I have heard stories of some schools that it's just off their radar, maybe not a priority, but that can be incorporated into what's called a 504. And those are going to vary state to state. So you just need to talk with your school. But the 504 plan, it addresses learning, but it also addresses physical needs. And so if your child has a inherited arrhythmia or a cardiac diagnosis, a congenital heart diagnosis, that can fall under that 504 plan. So again, a lot of that information is on SADS.org. You look at the school plans. They also have checklists, safe school checklists. And just like I'm sure Project Adam has educational information that you can take to the school, SADS also has information to make your school safe, and checklists that you can review with the staff there. So there's a lot of resources out there. It can be a little overwhelming. It can be really scary for parents, those times when their kids are out of their eyesight. So we always recommend form your team and have a good plan, and talk with your kids about making good choices at school. Make those choices to bring other people onto their team and educate. So lots of help out there, and it's come a long way. So who all do you find that parents should talk to? I know we recommend that they talk to the teacher, the PE teacher, that there's sort of one person in every arena that child's going to be in, whether it's somebody in the lunchroom, the recess teacher, sort of covering all those bases. Anything Project Adam would add to that?
And I think you definitely need to speak with the principal. I don't think the school nurse is enough. Usually the principal is very aware of children that are maybe medically fragile or have conditions. When my experience is when I go in and train, the principal is up there naming these children who have maybe a seizure disorder. They're naming them by first and last name to talk about how to react to their um, emergency. So I definitely include the principal. Don't think the school nurse is as high as you need to go. And your point of the PE teacher is very valid, and the individual teacher. That's probably it. And then if they're older and they are cleared to play sports, definitely the coach. It's We have pre-participation screening forms here that every family has to fill out before their child can play a sport for their school. But I think it needs to be a little bit more than just turning it in to the coach. But we follow the 10 questions, as I'm sure other states do. This is just Tennessee is all I know. But I'm sure other states have pre-participation screening forms. And the American Academy of Pediatrics has these 10 recommended questions that you should have on those forms, and just making sure that you've answered those truthfully, that you've talked to your child about if they're having, maybe you have a big, healthy 15-year-old that's about to go into high school, and this will be his first time doing two-a-days in August. And you're like, okay, this question asks if you've ever been, dizzy or lightheaded during exercise. Have you? Just really intentionally having that conversation with your student to make sure that you are and that student are on the same page as to any symptoms they might be experiencing, that kind of thing. Just conversations.
Conversations and specific questions.
Mm-hmm.
Like you mentioned, are you do you have some, palpitations in your heart or in your chest when you're exercising? Sometimes they may just assume that they're deconditioned. Another aspect I think is important is to talk with your family. Is there any family history?
Yeah.
And oftentimes the initial answer is no, we don't have any of that in our family. But then the more you get talking, has anyone, died on a sunny day, no weather, in a car accident driving by themselves, or drownings, or any younger death under 40 that may be looked at differently in light of more than one incident. So talk to your family members, talk to your kids. That's really important. And don't think that maybe it's just something that doesn't need to be addressed. It's easy to kind of brush those things off. And I know I have 5 kids, and so I know which child can tell me something and I can really put stock in it and which one might be wanting to get some attention. But I certainly would not want to, disregard any concerns from any kids. So family history, talk to your kids, make sure you get your sport physical filled out. Now, do you bring this program up into college level, or is this just K through 12?
It's mostly K through 12. Because we're a children's hospital funding this program, we tend to focus on that patient population. I have worked with the Vanderbilt University Athletics and trained their athletes. Their coaches and athletic trainers are trained, but what about the students? So I think it would be an amazing program on a college campus to do like a heat map of where their AEDs are located, how many kids know where they are in the dorm, et cetera, et cetera. I have lots of ideas, but we tend to just stay on K through 12.
You could try that home education in that K through 12. Hopefully it will carry into their college years as well.
Yes.
You mentioned location, and it reminded me, the AEDs they're very widespread in our community, and I think so. I would challenge people as you're out and about, not just thinking about schools, but when I saw one on a street light. So apparently Iowa City and a lot of their main intersections has them attached to the streetlight poles, and I would not have known that had I not just, of course it caught my eye, but kind of, spread the word, look around, where are the AEDs? Yeah. Anything else you'd like to add for our families?
I don't think so. No, not that I can think of.
Okay. So we're talking to parents about making sure those schools are safe. Now, when we move to the kids, we also need to make sure that the kids are prepared to talk about their condition. And so we find really open, honest communication with kids, age-based, whether you have a 6-year-old or a 12-year-old, look at what they're going through. If they're self-conscious, they may not want to share their disease, but the more comfortable they are, and we find the more knowledge they have, the less fear they have about it. And so we always encourage them. You can just come up with your own little speech. If you just tell kids and teachers and others that you work with or that you're around, what do you have? What is it called? What do you do about it? Well, I take medicine for it, or I have to go see my cardiologist once a year. So what does it mean to them, and what does it mean to you? And so what does it mean to you? You might say, I just have to be aware of how I'm feeling, and I have to take my medication regularly. What does it mean to you? As a friend or as a teacher, it means that, if you have concerns about me, don't assume I'm just sleeping in the back of the class. Address it. And if you have questions, ask me. It's not something they can catch from you. And again, just making it age appropriate, because in high school, they're going to say, well, of course I can't catch it, but when you're talking at a second or third grade level, kids' minds go to places. And so my granddaughter actually just gave a talk in her school, and that was one of the first things she addressed to her classmates about a disease. She said, it won't affect me. I didn't get it, and it won't affect you. You can't catch it from somebody being in the same room. And I thought that was just a bold, and she said she brought that into her little PowerPoint talk she gave because she knew a couple kids in her class were really anxious. And so she wanted to put them at rest. So talking to the kids about, age appropriate communication, make sure your high schoolers have, make sure that their good friends know what they have. Just, I think, keeping communication open. And we say, if you haven't talked about it, if you can't remember the last time you talked about it, then it's probably been too long. So it's easy put on the top shelf and sort of pretend that it's not part of your life.
Yeah, I would like to add, definitely put a plug in for when you have high school age children, making sure their closest friends understand what it might look like. And if you have an AED in your home, that they know where it is, and make sure that as a parent that these friends have your phone number, so that if they are ever out with your child and something happens, that they can reach out to you quickly to ask questions, or to, of course, call 911, but then to reach out to you, because you may have instructions or pointers for them. If so, anyway, I think it is important to surround yourself as you get older with peers that understand what could happen.
An AED, do they have one at home? And I think that pendulum has sort of swung back and forth. For a while, there was a big push for inherited arrhythmia patients to have an AED accessible. And I think some we're sort of slightly moving away from that a little bit, just given the presence of AEDs with emergency response systems and police cars. And we're really pushing CPR certification, that immediate, in the moment CPR until the AED gets there, and medication compliance. So, but that's a whole nother talk. Medication compliance with a teenager. Wow,
Yes.
that can be a huge challenge.
Yes.
But it does go back to the creating a good, strong team around you, and just educating everyone. So, we always ask in the clinic, if they do have an AED in their home, when's the last time they've checked the battery? And then also with everybody in the family, where is it? And you'll be surprised. I remember family that one said there were 3 teenagers in there, and one said, yeah, it's on the fridge. And somebody said, no, it's not. We moved it. It's in the bathroom. And somebody said, no, it's not. It's in the hall closet. And so their assignment was to go home and make sure they all knew where the AED was. So,
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And you can actually have, your phone call 911. I have to be careful what I say so that my phone doesn't pick up that request and do it. But it can be a definite hands-free now that we have Siri and Google and all of those. So notifying EMS has become quite a bit easier. So. All righty. Well, we sure appreciate you joining us and your expertise in the area and all the changes in the community that you're creating. Again, if someone wants to know in their state, if they've moved state, because I know laws are different state to state, school districts are all different. The first 3 steps maybe that you would tell them about getting their child ready to go back to school.
First, you want to know if your school has an AED. I think that's key. And then, now is this for a child with a congenital heart defect? You're asking?
I think it should be for all kids, particularly if your child has a known diagnosis. I think that it's a must, and that's where the care plans come in. But even if my child doesn't have a diagnosis, I feel that it's a safety for the community and for all the other kids. I would be advocating for all the other kids in the school to make sure that my local school had an emergency response plan in place.
Yeah, that's right. An emergency response plan in place, and that they have AEDs that are being maintained. When I first began my role, we had AEDs in our schools in metropolitan Nashville, but many of them had dead batteries. And so just making sure that it is on someone's radar. If you've got a school that does not have a regular nurse, the other people in that building don't understand the importance of that AED or that it needs to be checked. And it'll just be on a shelf somewhere or with EpiPens in a box somewhere, and half the people don't know where it is, and they have no idea that they need to be checking that green blinking light or the check mark to make sure it's rescue ready. So just checking in with people to not only do we have AEDs, but are they rescue ready? Is someone looking at that device at least once a month?
And you can always reach out to your state legislators and certainly advocate for CPR being a requirement. I know some states have required that to graduate. They've made it a requirement that you are CPR certified or trained, maybe not even certified, but at least trained. So it just stands to reason if we're educating all of our high school students on that we also educate our staff. So advocate with your legislation in your state to see if we can make that a consistent.
Yes.
Yeah. All right. Well, I hope your weather is a little cooler than ours up here. We have heat advisories.
We're a little bit cooler today, mid 80s.
Mid 80s. Well, it's a little cooler than here. Yeah, definitely. All right. Well, it's been a pleasure talking with you, and good luck in your getting schools off and getting as many certified as you can.
Thank you. Thanks for having me today.
All right. Take care.